You know, when you think of Canada, multiculturalism is probably one of the first words that pops into your head. It's like a core part of the national brand. But what if that perfect, idyllic image isn't the whole story? What if it was actually born not from some pure, feel-good idealism, but from a really intense political crisis? Well, today we're going to peel back the layers on Canadian multiculturalism. The popular image is this, right? A beautiful, harmonious cultural mosaic. It's this idea that Canada, just out of sheer goodwill, decided to celebrate all the vibrant cultures of people from all over the globe, all living together in peace. And look, it's a powerful and a really lovely idea. But what if it wasn't born out of a simple desire for harmony? What if it was actually a very calculated political strategy? Something designed to solve a crisis that was literally threatening to tear the entire country apart. That's the story we're really digging into today. So, to really understand the policy, we have to turn back the clock and understand the Canada that existed before it. Because this wasn't the diverse nation we see today. Not at all. It was a country built on a very specific and, frankly, very exclusionary vision. Okay, so from its start in 1867, Canada's power structure was crystal clear. Of course, Indigenous peoples were the original inhabitants, but it was the British and French colonists who set themselves up as the two dominant founding groups. And for nearly 100 years, immigration policy was explicitly designed to build what was known as a white Canada, actively keeping out people who were considered, well, undesirable. And this agenda, it wasn't subtle. For decades, official Canadian policy was openly exclusionary. I mean, just look at this timeline. You've got the 1885 head tax slapped on Chinese immigrants, the 1914 Komagata-Maro incident, where Indian refugees were flat out turned away, then a complete ban on Chinese immigration that lasted all the way until 1947, and of course the internment of Japanese Canadians during World War II. This was the reality of Canada. So, what changed? What flipped the switch? Well, it wasn't some sudden moral awakening. The real catalyst for multiculturalism was a national emergency that basically forced the government's hand. In the 1960s, Canada was facing this massive national unity crisis. The secessionist movement in Quebec was getting seriously powerful, and the federal government was, frankly, desperate to keep the country from falling apart. They had to do something, and that something meant rethinking the very definition of what the Canadian nation even was. And this slide just perfectly illustrates the political tightrope they were walking. On one side, you have French Canadians demanding recognition as an equal founding nation. They're pushing hard for official bilingualism and biculturalism. But then, on the other side, you have these other powerful European ethnic groups. We're talking Ukrainians, Italians, Poles. And they were getting worried. They were afraid that a focus on just British and French culture would shove them to the sidelines. So they started demanding their own recognition and their own funding. So, what was the solution to this huge political mess? In 1971, Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau announced a policy of multiculturalism within a bilingual framework. Honestly, it was a masterful political compromise. It gave French Canadians the official bilingualism they wanted, while at the same time, it satisfied those other European groups by officially recognizing and even funding their cultures. But here's the thing. The policy that was announced in 1971, that wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. It was really just the beginning. The policy would evolve like crazy over the next few decades, changing its focus and its meaning right along with the times. You can really break this evolution down into three main stages. First, you've got the incipient stage. That's the whole crisis period we just talked about. Then comes the formative stage in the 70s. This is the version of multiculturalism a lot of people still think of today, a focus on celebrating folklore, food, festivals, the song and dance stuff. But then it shifted into a much more serious phase, institutionalization. This third stage is where multiculturalism got some real teeth. It went from being a nice, feel-good idea to a legal reality. It was written directly into the 1982 Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It became its own official act in 1988, and this led to actual, tangible actions, new institutions to fight racism, and laws like the Employment Equity Act to combat discrimination. The focus was no longer just about celebrating culture. It was about fighting for equity. Okay, so this all sounds pretty positive, right? But a really powerful critique started to emerge, and it asked a very uncomfortable question. Did this policy truly create equality? Or did it just put a friendly mask on the same old power structures?
And right here, this is the central critique. Was the ultimate goal of multiculturalism really about celebrating everyone equally? Or was it actually a clever way to manage all this new diversity while making sure that the British and French stayed at the very top of the social and political ladder?
This quote just gets right to the heart of it. The original policy wasn't designed for racialized, non-white immigrants from places like Asia or Africa. In fact, they weren't even really part of the conversation. This was a negotiation happening between Canada's white ethnic groups. Now, there's a fancy academic term for this: a hegemonic racial hierarchy. Sounds complicated, I know, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It's a system where the dominant group gets to set all the rules. And sure, other groups are welcome to express their culture, but only as long as they don't fundamentally challenge the power of that dominant group. So, the ultimate argument from critics is this: simply celebrating different foods and dances inside a system that is fundamentally unequal doesn't get you to true justice. It just manages the appearance of diversity. To get to real equality, you have to challenge the system itself. And that leaves us with a massive question for the future. You see, the story of Canadian multiculturalism isn't finished. It's an ongoing project, a constant negotiation. The challenge, moving forward, is figuring out how to move beyond simply celebrating diversity to actually dismantling the structures that prevent true justice and equality for every single citizen. And that's something we're thinking about.